All right. All right. Welcome everyone to the OrganizedPreneur Podcast. I am your host, Aldreama Harper. I am a podcast launch strategist and online business system specialist, and I am super excited about today's episode because I have my newfound friend and special guest, Susan Goodrich, who is an empowerment coach, helping overwhelmed and exhausted heart-centered entrepreneurs to get organized and energized while living a life of more love, abundance, and happiness. Susan, welcome to the OrganizedPreneur Podcast. I'm so excited that you are here.
Well, it is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you, Aldreama. I am excited.
Yes. I'm so excited about what we're going to, talk about today. Of course, for the sake of the audience, just a little bit about how we came to know each other. We were both in a podcast mastermind, and so we connected there, and then we decided that, hey, let's do an interview podcast together. How about we do that? And so a few months later, here we are. And so I'm so excited to talk about, the things in terms of your journey and the things that you're going to share with everyone to help them and empower them. So let's just kind of talk a little bit about, let's just start with the first question. So what inspired you to become an empowerment coach?
Well, the inspiration to become an empowerment coach started when after I'd had my children and quite a successful business, and suddenly my business started to go like this. And it really was a time, not only was it, what I recognized, what it was, how I was not taking care of myself, how I was not showing up the way that I, had for my clients, but also that the industry had changed. The industry, I built a business on cold calls before the internet was a thing. And so I had to learn how to do some online marketing. But what happened was when I jumped into doing the online marketing, I would see all these women in suffering with this feeling like so isolated and alone and feeling in that place of scarcity and lack and feeling, I could tell that they were, shaming themselves for not being as far along as they were. There was this lower vibrational energy that I was like, there has to be a better way to do this. In fact, because my business had done this and I was kind of also in that state, had hired a coach who got my business up and running really quickly. But what happened was that after having the most successful month I'd ever had, I only burnt myself out again. And so I crashed. And so I was like, there has to be a better way, not just for myself, but for watching these women. I mean, it was just heartbreaking seeing these women not making the strides that they needed to. And I could tell there was something else. It was something underneath that. And I jumped into yet another program, to figure it out. And then another one to figure out how to do online training because now we're in a whole new space. And so I did a little bit of coaching around saboteurs, like learned how to become a coach around saboteurs, those critical voices, learning how to transform our inner mean girls. And that was in late 2019. And in early 2020, I realized, well, actually at Christmas in 19, I woke up and I heard this little voice that said, move. I was like, ooh, what's that all about? So in early January, in early 2020, I put my house on the market and I sold it because I had really struggled in my business, and I sold my house and I actually took my debt and I turned it upside down, which was really great. And then moved back to my hometown, which is where I am now, which afforded me to buy, a beautiful home and have a more dynamic life than I could afford in the city of Toronto, because that's where I had lived for 45 years. But I had also as many people may not know, is that I had been single all those years, at least since my early 30s. And I never had children. And I always thought that I would. And then in my late 30s, I mourned the idea that I would ever have children. But at 52, the call showed up again. And somebody said, "Oh, you can still be a mom." They had known somebody who'd adopt. And I thought, oh, so I started that process. And in that process, I started looking at the adoption process. Again, I woke up, another little voice, and it said, "You've always wanted a baby of your own." And a few days later, I woke up and I heard, "You need to get your body ready." And I was 52 at the time. So I did the research and I was like, how am I ever going to do this? Like, it was just so beyond anything that I thought was even possible. I had given up the whole idea of any possibility. But I started doing some research and all the little pieces started falling into place for me. And so at the age of 53, I gave birth to not one, but two.
Wow.
Happy, healthy, handsome twin boys.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm a mother of 15-year-old twin boys, which means I'm 68 if you do the math. And so it was through the journey of knowing that we can create things and knowing that we can stand outside possibility that allowed me to, when I saw this work on transformational feminine power coaching, I thought that sounds like something that's kind of in alignment with what I've done and would help women step into their own power to be able to create the kinds of things that I did. But like I said, sometimes we have to fall back in order to jump forward. So, as I saw that, in my process, when things started to go low, what did I have to do in order to really, what is my soul calling me to do? And I think that's the truth. It's like we are meant to evolve. My sister calls me a chameleon. And I think what she sees is that I'm always evolving. And not all of us are meant to do that, but many of us are. And those are the women that I work with, are the ones who are, they're following their soul's calling. And that's, so that's kind of what inspired me was, it was my own journey, but also watching all these women who just, were suffering. And I don't want to see that. I want to raise the vibration. I want everybody to feel happy and joyful and playful.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that, when I went to your website and you had on your website your story about something was missing. Right. And so one of the things that you said, from the outside, my life looked full and happy, yet I could feel that something was missing. And then you said, after over 30 years in the engineering field, I was hitting my income goals, but I felt like I wasn't winning in life. I thought that was so powerful because, a lot of people may equate winning to, or success, if you will, to, I'm hitting my income goals, and like, you were in the engineering field, which I'm sure that was something you wanted to do at the time, because even you and I talked about before we jumped on about, your techie, geeky kind of side. And so that was filling that, within you, but yet there was still something missing. And so I guess what I'm getting to is, help people to understand or that journey. What does it feel like? Like if you could give an analogy of what that feels like when something is just missing, like I'm making the money, I'm doing, this is a career that I want to, do, what does that does it feel like a pit in your stomach, or you just feel like you just keep wanting something? What does that actually feel like?
Well, for me, the sense of feeling like something's missing, it's just like there's this heaviness that sits over your shoulders, like, and down your arms. It's like somebody's put this big cloak on top of you, and you're walking around with this heavy cloak. It kind of reminds me of what I think a lot of people went through in 2020 was the Groundhog Day, right? Like, it was the same thing over and over and over. Yeah. And I love that question, because even this morning, I caught myself in that place of, am I really living fulfilled?
Yeah.
That whole thing. I remember somebody once asking me a question about being on purpose. What's your purpose? And that's one of my things, is I help coach people around their life purpose, their life and business purpose. And what I see is that it's so important to have them both in alignment. Right? Because that was one of the things that I recognized about myself, that I was behaving a very different way in my life with my children than I was in what my goal was around my business. And I've recently shifted that. And it was so funny, because we were away a couple of weeks ago, and I took the boys out, and we went to the beach, and then we went for an ice cream cone. Now, I know that sounds really simple. They were $8 ice cream cones, but they were, but man, it was worth it, because just the experience of doing that with them. And at the end of the day, and we went to the drive-in after that.
Oh, wow.
We still have some drive-ins up here, drive-in movies. And I went home that night. I was like, oh man, I feel so fulfilled. And I was like, what was that? And I recognized that's really a big piece of my purpose. And sometimes we can have our businesses kind of take over that piece. And I think in the early days, like, it also reminds me of, like, when I went to have, so I did IVF, and I had to actually go see a therapist or a psychologist, just verify that I wasn't crazy.
Right.
And her explanation to me was, she said to me, your business was your first baby. This is going to be your next baby. She said, so I know you know how to take care of them. And it was such a thing that kind of stuck in my mind, because when we have a new business, we need to nurture it like a new baby.
Yeah.
But I also had to remember that my children are also my babies. And sometimes we can get really out of alignment. We can get kind of, going in too many different directions. And so, one of the things I coach around, because I'm a life coach, but I coach over entrepreneurs. So I coach, right, this blueprint over top of the life coaching skills, and knowing that we are the foundation of our business, is that we need to take care of this. Because I know the reason that my business went like this was because I wasn't taking care of this first.
Yeah. Oh, that is so good. So what are some things, from a practical standpoint, when you say you weren't taking care of this, what were some things you were neglecting?
Well, just taking time out for myself, taking those really simple little bliss breaks, right? Rather than pushing and pushing and pushing, and not taking time at the end of my workday for a few minutes for me to sit down on the couch and go and start making dinner. And it reminds me of, and at one point I had an office outside the house, and then I would come home, and as soon as I come in the door, I'd start dinner, and I still had my coat on. Well, it reminded me of a friend of mine, and she'd invited me for dinner, and I was sitting in her kitchen, and she came rushing through the door, because her husband, he was home, and so he'd let me in. She came rushing through the door, and she started dinner, and I was like, that's what she did. She didn't take her coat off. Like, that's how many of us do that, right? We don't even stop to take our coats off. We're like so rushing into that next thing. And I think as women, we're conditioned or shaped to think that we have to do that.
Yeah.
And the truth is, if we don't fill our bucket first, right? Like, if we're not 75% full,
Yeah.
If we start serving, we're serving from this, and eventually it's
Yes.
just going to get empty, right? And then there's nothing left to serve. But
That's right.
when we're 75% full, when we serve, we actually start to fill our own bucket, which is kind of interesting. So we have to be aware of where we are in that. So,
Yeah. I love that when you said, we have to fill our own bucket. And we know, we probably don't think of it in a way that, filling our own bucket from serving, from because those things are so fulfilling, right? And so, and the reason that I said that was because, fulfillment and filling our own bucket, I never thought about it, that way, but it definitely works from the inside out, right? And so, because I know that there's a lot in in this, online space, people talk about, self-care and things like that. How important let me ask it this way. Is there a certain maybe age that we start to feel that way, like, okay, something's missing? And I know not everybody feels, feels that, but if they are constantly working from an empty place, they will feel that way. But is there a certain age where people, particularly women, because that's what we're, primarily talking to, that we may start to feel that way? Is there an age, or there's a season, or what does that look like? I don't even know if I'm asking it the right way.
It's a great question. I'm just kind of thinking about, I think it's just the evolution of where we are as human beings. Like when we come into an awareness of, right, some of us just are on that path, and we believe we also are raised, a lot of people are raised in this conformist, to conform to what goes on. We're supposed to follow, some people know what they want to do also from birth. Like I wasn't one of those people. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I wanted to do many things. I mean, I danced. I was a musician. I wanted to do music therapy. I mean, I became a pharmacy technician. I did, architectural drafting. I did my real estate license. I mean, I've done all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think part of it is who you are. Are you meant to evolve, right? And that empty feeling, I think there's a lot of times in our late 40s, especially women, right? Mid to late 40s. I've noticed women kind of really struggle. It's kind of perimenopause. It's like we're also going through like we're going through a physiological change.
Right.
But we're spiritual beings in a human body, and we're meant to experience all of those. But I do believe that, as we get older, we have a lot of wisdom just from having been on this earth. Yeah. Like, and wisdom doesn't come from all the things that you studied.
Right.
It comes from having taken the time to integrate it. I know for me, I need to actually walk my talk before I can really get out there and, I have to I got to know that that's really the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think, I think you're right. Like, I think that there is a time in life, but I also know that, if we were called to be a parent, like I know in my late 20s, I really wanted to become a mom, and that I was in a relationship that I realized he wasn't really the right person for me to be raising children with. So, yeah.
Wow. So after having gone through that journey, what advice would you have for those that may be feeling like, I'm at a place in my life and I just don't feel, very fulfilled. I feel like there's something missing. I feel like I need to be doing something else. I mean, I don't know if I'm walking in my, purpose. What would you say to them?
Well, I think it's a really good thing to do some exploration around who you are, right? Really who you are. I mean, as an empowerment coach, that's one of the things I coach people on. But even to explain the journey that I've had, I was really fortunate. And I'm going to say fortunate, how when we lose our jobs, how could we possibly think that was a fortunate thing?
Yeah.
But I was 21. I got replaced by the first computer ever in a pharmacy in Ontario, Canada. And they could have gotten me a job somewhere else. And I thought, well, no, I meant to do more than type labels and count pills. I know that. And my dad sent me to what he called an industrial psychologist. And I got to take all of these tests to figure out who I was and so that really gave me a sense of where I needed to go. Gotcha. And then again in my late I guess I was 30. It must have been my early 30s. I had kind of hit a ceiling in the company that I was working with. And I thought, I just felt as a calling. And so I went to some more, was a company called Bernard Haldane, and they did all of they did personality, tests like the Myers-Briggs, and then, then they, and then a whole bunch of other pieces in it. But what I find is that when we go through these processes, what they do is they really help us understand who we are, what we're geared for. And it also helps actually up-level our confidence. And I think that's one of the most important things, right? Is to be able to up-level your confidence, especially when you hit a wall or you feel like there's something missing and you're like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. Right?
Yeah. So I know, early in our conversation, even before we started to record, you were saying that you had worked with, some speakers and people, in that industry, and some were your clients. What were some of your success stories? What was the most transformational event, or from one of your clients, or the biggest transformation that you've seen?
Oh, I saw when I did this piece, I saw some really big ones, but I think the biggest one, and it's pretty profound, was this one. She was a VA from the Philippines, and she had jumped into my program, and she was struggling. She knew what she wanted to do in business, and she was married. She had a young child, so we have those challenges of children in our lives, right? Because it's a whole other story when you're in that stage of your life. And she was having trouble closing. She was having trouble closing, work, like closing
deals.
Closing the sale. And I have this blueprint that I use, and I get everybody to rate like from 1 to 10 where they are in each area, right, of their business, including you as the foundation. And in her sales area, she had rated it as a 0. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. We start at 1, but she'd rated it at a 0. Yeah. And we're near the end. We had, I don't know, about 6 sessions, I think, together. And then about in the fifth session, the 4th session, she came and she was really struggling with this. So I did some coaching around that. And she said, I think I got it. So then the next week, and she said, oh, I got it. And it was actually not the sales process. It was what was going on and what had gone on in something early in her own life.
Wow.
In a relationship. Because that's what I see. It's not the sales script. There's another level, right? It's very, very much another level. And so we cleared this piece, and she said, I said, so how do you feel about this? And she said, oh, I feel like a 10. So then the next day she sent me a message saying, oh, she didn't close that next deal. But then the next week, we did a little bit more work on that.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, the following week, she showed up, she'd closed 2 large contracts. And she said,
oh, wow.
not only did you save my business, but you saved my marriage.
Wow.
She hadn't actually shared that she and her husband were really struggling. And so because of the piece that I coached her on, it just shifted everything for her. And that was huge. It was huge.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think people realize, I can say this for myself. I remember when I was struggling so much in my business. And so in my organized business, and this was about 10 years ago, and I was struggling so much. And I did not realize how mindset was so like, that is like 80%, if not more, of the success of your business, your life, everything. And I did, until my mindset changed, nothing else was changing. And so what would you say, even maybe some tips or something, even in that area, that maybe someone can, take away, whoever's listening, to the replay or whatever, what would you say to them?
Around the mindset piece.
Yeah.
Well, the mindset, I mean, we have, how do I want to address this? What comes up for me is the importance of transforming triggers.
Yeah. Oh,
right? These old
so good.
stories that we have, right? Where we come into an environment that's similar to something that happened when we were really young, right? I have friends who are, going through some issues with their senior mom, and all the siblings are really struggling because they don't know how they're being triggered. And so what happens is we behave at that age. So like if you were 5 when there was first conflict in that environment, you made up a meaning around something about that environment. If you've never cleared that, what happens is that now when you're in a similar situation, you don't show up with your adult skills, you show up with those 5-year-old skills.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And so those are like, and that can really hold us back. Right.
Yeah.
But I think one of the biggest things, and it's just coming to me in relationship to what you're asking, is about a lot of times with the mindset piece, we're in judgment, in those critical voices. And instead of being in our heart, like being in curiosity and compassion. And compassion to me is like the greatest healer. It's love, right? And it's an energy. And maybe this sounds woo to a lot of people, but it's not. I know it's not. Like we know that. I mean, you hear it in the songs, right? Love will heal everything, right? All you need is love is right what the Beatles would say.
Yeah.
And even though my mother told me that, no, you'll never survive on love, when I wanted to run away with my boyfriend at 16.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
So I stayed home.
Yeah.
But I think that whole piece between shifting from judgment to discernment, being in our hearts and being open, right? That energy of being open and curious about what's going on. I think curiosity is such an incredible quality to have.
Yeah. It can open a whole lot of doors, and opportunities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what would you, are there any, tips or anything that you would like to share as we begin to close, that you want to share with the listeners, that, like drop the mic kind of thing?
Drop the mic kind of thing.
Drop the mic.
Well, I just want to tie this in with something that I have to share with your audience.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
And it's very much in alignment with, filling our own bucket. Because I have a process called the Next Right Steps. And it is really about stepping in and taking a look at how do we get your own needs met. Even knowing that you have needs.
Yes.
Right? Like just being able to take this, it's a process that takes you
Yeah.
through the steps and that, of what are your needs and how can you get them met. But it's also great in everything I do. I use it in everything I do in my business. Like even when I'm starting something new and I'm struggling and I'm like, okay, wait a minute.
Yeah.
What am I feeling about this? Especially when we're
Yeah.
in fear or we're a little scared because we're stretching outside our comfort zone, right? And then going, well, what do I really need? And then dropping into that place of curiosity, because it really is, that's really where our answers come from, is really dropping into our heart and getting really curious and listening
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
listening.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's next for you, Susan?
Well, as you know, I've launched my podcast.
Yes.
Where I'm interviewing, it's called Sensational Souls, where I'm interviewing sensational souls who are evolving the world. They're doing work to get us out of all that conformity, right? To help us live a better and happier and healthier life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us about the clients that you're looking for, even, in your podcasting, because we know that your podcast is going to, you'll be sharing, things on the podcast, but that will help the listeners, right? And so what are the type of clients or what type of listeners do you want to attract to your podcast?
Well, those who are entrepreneurs
or your
right?
business,
Yes, for
right?
my business. So
Yes.
I'm really excited to be able to share a lot of my processes with heart-centered entrepreneurs who are potentially kind of struggling with overwhelm, sabotage, piece where they are judging themselves, and it's making it really hard for them to step into that next piece, right? Because we need to be able to hold what we call paradox, right? Like the place where we are and then the place where we're going, and being held on this, what often is a rocky journey, right? Rather than returning to always back to the safe place. That's what our body tries to do, tries to bring us back to our safe place. So people who are really, maybe have a message that they want to get out to the world, who maybe really want to make an impact on the world, who really want to evolve, or maybe even just step into their own leadership in their own lives, right? Because to be empowered, learning to be empowered, right? It's a process.
Yeah.
It is a process.
Yeah.
Right? Anybody who's sitting around waiting for somebody to do something for them is really kind of giving their power away.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So Susan, go ahead and give people your contact information, anything that you want to share in terms of how to reach you and things like that, and whatever that looks like.
Okay. You can text me at 1-844-504-1500. So that's 1-844-1500. And just text the word steps, and I'll actually send you the next right steps. It's a little mini audio course, and you'll get invited to join my Facebook group if it feels right for you, and to get on my calendar to have a conversation, and to take a look at my blueprint page that talks about the Soul Aligned Business Blueprint.
Nice, nice, nice. Well, Susan, this has been absolutely delightful. I want to thank you for coming on the OrganizedPreneur Podcast. Thank you for talking to the audience and empowering them, with, your journey. That always, when we go through a journey, it's not just for us. It's also for those that we're in contact with. So thank you so much for sharing, your journey and sharing the things that you shared on the podcast today. And so I just want to thank you for your time, and hopefully we will get another chance to do this again.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Aldreama. It's been a pleasure to be here and an honor.
Well, thank you. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for listening and watching this episode. I hope that you will definitely get in contact with Susan. She's given you the number. Also, this information will be in the show notes. So make sure that you reach out to Susan as soon as possible. All right. ASAP. All right. And so we'll see you next time on the OrganizedPreneur Podcast. Be organized, stay organized, and happy podcasting. Bye, everybody.
Hmm.